Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley. He's my co-host. I almost called you Ryan Blake. Zach will be joining this show later. Want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Superbook. There has been a big shakeup in terms of MLB futures thanks to the Orioles' acquisition of ace Corbin Burnes. Right now at Superbook, Burnes is the fourth choice to lead MLB in pitching wins this season at 20-1. The Orioles are now tied for the first choice to win the American League at plus 475 and are tied for the third choice to win the World Series at 10-1. When you sign up at Superbook, use the code PressBox23 and you'll receive a same-day first bet match up to $250, win or lose. Ryan, 10-1, third in baseball to win the World Series. What a week for Orioles baseball. What a week for the Baltimore Orioles fans. Just an unbelievable stretch over the last 5-6 days.
Paul, if you had told me on Sunday afternoon when I was lying face down on my living room floor after Zay Flowers fumbled at the goal line that this would be one of my favorite weeks as a Baltimore sports fan ever, I would have told you that you were absolutely insane. The Angelos family sells the team. 24 hours later, they go out and trade for Corbin Burnes. I am over the moon excited for the future of the Baltimore Orioles. What a week. What a week it has been.
I'll tell you, man, if you had told me, hey, look, the Ravens are going to lose the AFC Championship game, but I guarantee you the Orioles franchise will be sold the following week, and the Orioles will acquire one of the best starting pitchers in all of baseball, I would have signed up for that in blood. I would have absolutely signed up for that in blood. This is probably the most excited I've ever been as an Orioles fan. And you're talking to a guy who convinced himself that the 2002 Baltimore Orioles were a good baseball team. This is the most excited I have ever been for this team. Like Kevin Garnett, anything is possible! The Angelos family selling the Baltimore Orioles to David Rubenstein, co-founder of the Carlyle Group. He heads the new ownership group that includes New York businessman Michael Arrighetti. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think so. Honestly, I'm not even sure if it's Rubenstein or Rubenstein.
It's Rubenstein. I know that. I got confirmation on that. It is Rubenstein.
Good. I meant to look that up before the show.
The group that includes New York businessman Michael Arrighetti, his partners Mitchell Goldstein. That one I did not look up. And Michael Smith, Orioles Hall of Fame shortstop and third baseman Cal Ripken Jr., former mayor of New York Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of Baltimore Kurt Schmoke, Washington Spirit majority owner Michelle Kang, and NBA Hall of Famer Grant Hill. What an ownership group. You have 3 billionaires in that ownership group. The sales reported for $1.725 billion, nearly 10 times what Peter Angelos paid for the club way back in 1993. What a return on your investment, 10 times what you paid for it. Speculation, Ryan, is that the control person, John Angelos, was not happy with the lease agreement that was signed, specifically the denial of land that he was looking to develop as a contributing factor to the sale.
Good.
Good. Screw that guy. A number of Maryland representatives spoke out on the matter. Most notably were 2 of them. Governor Wes Moore said the transparency that was required, it was not there, and it's disappointing. Good. And then the most ballinest baller of all ballers in Baltimore, State Comptroller Brooke Learman, who said, I do think that John's behavior displayed an incredible lack of respect for the state and our role in working with the Baltimore Orioles and our role as the owners of the home of the Baltimore Orioles. She went on to say, it's incredibly disappointing, although frankly not surprising. That said, we crafted an agreement in such a way that it would not matter who owned the Orioles, because I think many of us believe that the Angelos family's days as owners were numbered anyways. It was important for us to protect the state and taxpayers and our assets, no matter who the owners are. Bravo.
Very well said, Madam Comptroller.
She absolutely torched that dude. And it's like, we heard some things about there was a lease agreement agreed to in like early December, and then it got backed off from, and we were sitting there like, what the hell is going on? And basically, it was no, man. They basically came out and without saying it, basically said, John Angelos is a piece of garbage, and we know that he's lying and he's making up a bunch of crap here. So we're not going to sign this agreement. And they had to make it so that because they knew that he was leaving. They knew that he was going to sell the team, and they weren't about to get shafted by this guy like the rest of like all of Baltimore has been shafted by that guy for the last 5 years. It just an incredible moment for the city of Baltimore and its fans. Frankly, I don't give a shit about what John Angelos did. I'm glad he's getting called out for being the low down, dirty snake that he is. But if his being a snake is what led to the trepidation and giving him the land and ultimately led to his selling of the team, then hell yeah, you're a slithery little snake, man, and I love it. Get the hell out of my face. Be gone. So happy right now. What was your reaction when you got the news that the Orioles had been sold?
So I had just gotten off of work and I had a text from a friend. I had, similar to what I did when the Orioles were losing Game 3 against the Rangers, I deleted Twitter from my phone before the end of the Ravens game because it's not good for my mental health to read all the negative takes. It's too much for me sometimes. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take a little break from Twitter. So my friend had texted me and said, is it real? Ryan, is it real? I was like, what are you talking about? And I immediately re-downloaded Twitter because I knew that that's where I would get the scoop before he texted me back. And man, just there was a little bit of, at the beginning, I think it was Puck Sports that had originally reported it. And there was a little bit of like, is this reputable? Is it legit? And as we started to see some people who knew about Puck Sports and were familiar with them, or Puck News, I apologize. It started to seem like, all right, yeah, I mean, this is the same guy who, reported parts of the Washington Commanders sale and has been right about a bunch of stuff, has been doing this for 20 years and is very well connected. It was like, all right, maybe there's some legs to this. And then we see Andy Koska of the Baltimore Banner corroborate the report. And it was like, okay, yeah, this is actually happening. And just the sense of relief, the absolute boulder lifted off of our shoulders. Man, like, don't let the door hit you on your way out, man.
Yeah.
Like, see ya. I don't want to see or hear from you ever again. I hope that this whole, John sticking around as a minority owner or whatever his role is.
He's a senior advisor.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that doesn't last long. I hope that nobody else in the ownership group or the front office listens to him. See ya. Bye. Good riddance. I don't care. See ya.
Absolutely. I'll tell you. So admittedly, I was at the bar when I found out, and I don't go to the bar. I don't. Those days are long gone for me. I don't go to the bar. I was actually coerced there by a friend who wanted me to meet this woman that he was beginning to see. And when I say beginning to enjoy after hours time with, we'll put it that way. And, God bless her. This woman is in her 70s. Like, she's in her 70s. And so I was there specifically to meet her and then make fun of him to no end about this.
Is this friend your age?
No, he's a little bit older. That's all I'll care to say.
Okay,
but
fair.
He's significantly younger than her. And so but as soon as he introduced me, I had enough time to shake her hand and say, hi, I'm Paul. And then I got a text from a friend with a screenshot of a tweet saying that the Baltimore Orioles have been sold. So then I'm not even paying attention to what she's saying to me. Some other guy's talking to me and I'm not paying attention to what he's saying. I'm just going through my phone. And people are texting me left and right. I'm sure people were texting you too. Is this real? I'm getting direct messages. Is this real? Is this actually happening? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm as lost as you are.
Yeah.
Then when all the other confirmations started coming out, it was like my heart was racing. I was so excited. I almost didn't finish my drink, but my buddy had paid for it and I didn't want to be rude. So I finished my drink and I said, see ya. And I ran out the door. I went home and spent the next several hours just looking for all the confirmation that I could get. Just an unbelievable unbelievable feeling, unbelievable moment, almost as unbelievable as the moment you sink your teeth into a nice piece of Royal Farms fried chicken. No big game celebration is complete without Royal Farms world famous chicken. Get an 8-piece mix for just $12 or a 10-piece dark for just $15 at your neighborhood Royal Farms today. You see what I did there? You like that?
That was a great segue.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, one of the things that I didn't put it in the notes, but it just goes to show kind of the piece of crap that John Angelos is. Rock Kabatko, who has been on the bat around before, and he had a 16-year plus streak of posting a blog post every single day. It was Ripken-esque. He had not missed a post in 16 years. And his radio silence through all of this was noteworthy. Rock gets a lot of crap from people. I personally like Rock. I've met Rock in person at an Orioles game. He's been nothing but engaging and friendly to me. And I've had nothing but great conversations with him over the years. So I personally like Rock. And of course, he's the Orioles' most well-known writer. He and Dan Connolly are both up there. And so I immediately go to check out what Rock had to say, and there's nothing. There's nothing. And I think it was Zach Goodman that I had messaged, because he messaged me first, and I said, I can't believe we haven't heard anything from Rock. And then somebody showed a tweet where Rock was not allowed to write an article. He said he put, I was unable to. I'm paraphrasing here. I was unable to post a story that I wanted to do. So the streak is over. I'm taking a hiatus. And I get it, but man, talk about the worst possible time to end the streak. The most significant week in the history, in the last 40 years of the Baltimore Orioles, and their main beat writer is radio silent. And to me, it's telling that they wouldn't let him. They would not let him talk about the sale of this team. And I'm thinking that he's sitting there and he's like, I'm their main writer. I'm watching all these other publications come out with a story about this and get to talk about this, and you're not going to let me say anything? Well, screw you then. I'm taking some time off. The Orioles get sold, and then they trade for Corbin Burnes, the first legitimate ace on this staff dating back to Mike Mussina. Just what a time. It's like, who was the guy that got hurt and then Lou Gehrig took over for him? The first.
I wouldn't know that, I don't think.
Yeah, that first baseman for the Yankees, who was like their everyday first baseman, he got injured. Lou Gehrig took over, and then the next thing you know, the guy never gets to play again. What a time to go on hiatus and break your streak.
Yeah, it reminds me of like I'm thinking back to when the Ravens injured Tommy Maddox, and then Ben Roethlisberger took over as the Steelers quarterback.
Yep,
that's about as far back as my memory goes. It's definitely strange, but like you said, noteworthy. I don't know all the details of who is in charge of approving his articles or permitting him what he can and cannot write. I think I have an idea. But yeah, I mean, the most exciting week in terms of news and the most important week in terms of news in my lifetime. Angelos has owned the team since 1993. I was born in December 94. So, I mean, this is all I've ever known. And, Rock is our guy. He had an incredible streak. And I'm sure there's some politics involved in why he was unable to post following the sale. Could he have come up with something else to write about? Maybe, but it would have been weird as hell if he was just posting like, the Orioles are still exploring the starting pitching market. Mike Elias had a press conference and, or had a talk at the Birdland Caravan and said all this, blah, 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 blah. That would have been weird considering the timing of it all.
Yeah.
So I'm like you, man. I've never had an issue with Rock myself. We've always been cordial. I understand he does get a good bit of hate, and I don't really understand why. But yeah, I mean, definitely strange that we haven't heard from him in several days now.
You know, when I first noticed that he was not reporting on it, my initial thought was, well, he works for Masson. The team hasn't released a statement about this yet. It hasn't become official yet. And maybe because he works for Masson and Masson is owned by the Orioles, he is not allowed to say anything, or he's not going to say anything until it's confirmed by the team. The fact that he basically came out and said without saying, they're not letting me, and I think it's crap. I think it's very telling. You know, I do think it's also very telling that Masson is part of the sale of the team. Masson is going with that. I'm very interested to see what a few billionaires owning the team can do for Masson. You know, it was already in the works that you were no longer going to need a cable subscription to use the Masson app, that it was going to be a monthly service, a monthly fee now, which I think is what they should have done anyway. It's basically the main reason I haven't cut the cord yet, is because of the Masson app. So, and I'm interested to see what's going to happen with programming for Masson. If they're just going to say, you keep running, the people that run Masson, you keep doing what you're going to do. But I do like the fact that the Masson is going to the new ownership group in this deal. We're waiting on Zach Goodman. He's probably a few minutes away from joining the show. But I do want to talk, how important is it that Cal Ripken is a part of this ownership group, Ryan? To me, I think it signifies, like, if Cal's part of this group, stuff's going to happen. This isn't going to be a regular ownership.
Yeah, look, we've been clamoring for this for the last couple of decades, really. Ever since Cal retired, we've seen people talking like, "Hey, what if Cal bought the Birds? You know, what if Cal Ripken was part of the next ownership group? Like, hey, Cal, save us from the Angelos family." There's been a lot of that kind of conversation, and for it to finally come to fruition, 23 years after his retirement, 22 seasons later, it's exciting, man. That it's a guy who and not far off from David Rubenstein, who is a Baltimore guy, is an Orioles fan. Cal Ripken loves the Orioles, and as a result, he's going to want to do whatever he can to help the Orioles be as good as they can be. And so having him involved in the ownership group is massive. He's the face of an organization. You know, since Brooks passed away, he's probably I think without a doubt, the most recognizable figure in Baltimore Orioles history who's currently living. And for him to be part of the ownership group, it's everything we could ask for. It really is. We've got 3 multi-billionaires with incredibly deep pockets, and Cal Ripken Jr., among others. What more could we want?
It's a new day in Baltimore, and it's so funny, man. Like, I don't know how to act. You know what I mean? I was alive for almost 9 years before Peter Angelos bought the team, but I didn't understand ownership or anything like that. All I knew at that age was that the Baltimore Orioles were the baseball team in Baltimore. You know what I mean? And then, and we saw him spend a lot of money from like 1995 through 2000. The Orioles had a top 10 payroll in all of baseball, including the number 1 payroll, I think, in 98 and 99. We saw him spend money, and then we saw him kind of get a little bit gun shy because of stuff like Albert Bell and Scott Erickson, and then all the crap that came along with the offseason before 2004 when they signed Javi Lopez, Rafael Palmeiro, and Miguel Tejada. So, I mean, we did see an ownership group led by Peter Angelos that spent money until they got scared off and stopped doing it. So I'm very excited to see what this team is going to do moving forward. We already saw that it gets announced that the new ownership group is taking over, and then within 24 hours, the Orioles trade for Corbin Burnes. They trade DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, and competitive balance round A pick, 34th overall pick, to the Brewers in exchange for Corbin Burnes. And I'm trying to not get into this because I don't want to take a step back to talk about the ownership change again, the sale of the team. When Zach gets on the show, I should have told him 10:15 instead of 10:20. But we have to talk about it. I don't want to bury the lead here. Well, it's hard because both are leads, right?
Here's the thing. We don't have to get into the details of what's in the notes and what we want to talk about. Can I just give my
Yes.
reaction overall to the Orioles having Corbin
Yeah.
Burnes on their team? So I don't know if it's because he's been on my dynasty fantasy baseball team for the last 3 or 4 years, or if it's because he, has spent his career with the Brewers, which is a team that I mean, I'm not sure I have a second favorite team, but the Brewers would be in the running if they were. It's a team that I like. I've always kind of, wished them success, especially against teams like the Cardinals and Cubs.
I hate the Brewers.
I
hate them. I hate them.
Fair enough. Well, that's all to say on my end, at least. Corbin Burnes, I've been trying to think, is there another starting pitcher in Major League Baseball, not counting anybody on the Orioles, that I like more than Corbin Burnes? And I haven't found anybody yet. There's a couple that might be close, but the Orioles just traded for my favorite pitcher in baseball. And that is, I mean, I was similar to you when the news of the ownership sale broke. I was at the bar. I was at a happy hour with some friends after work. And I had put my phone away, and I pulled it out, and I had a bunch of text messages, a couple DMs, like, oh my God, Corbin Burnes. And then my first reaction was, what's the damage? What do we have to give up? And when I saw the return, which we'll get into later, I'm like, all right, you have to pull the trigger on that deal. Corbin Burnes is a Baltimore Oriole. And I'm telling this to my friends who know nothing about baseball. They don't care about the Orioles. And I'm like a kid in a candy store. I can't stop smiling and nerding out over, the Orioles and what this means, and, talking about the sale that happened the day before. Man, I'm absolutely giddy with everything that's gone on this week. Ever since the Ravens game, it's been
nothing
but sunshine.
Sunshine. The Orioles do pull the trigger on trading for Corbin Burnes. And if you've got a gambling problem, maybe you need to pull the – wow, don't say that. Wow, don't say that. I was trying to have another solid segue, and I was like, whoa, you cannot say that.
Don't pull the trigger on that parlay.
Don't pull the trigger on that parlay, but pull the trigger on calling 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services if you or a loved one has a gambling problem. Only trigger we want you pulling there. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. Joining the show now, our former co-host and producer of the Bat Around in its original iteration. He is Zachary Allen Goodman. Zach, good morning. Thanks for joining the show. How are you?
Morning, guys. I knew I'd get the lovely introduction with my my fake middle name. I appreciate that. It's in the description too. I saw that, and I joined the Orioles jacket, Orioles hat outfit situation here, so I like that. But I was not. Unfortunately, I was not at the bar when this news broke of the sale. I was at a train station, so I guess I can't fit that narrative. But
what were you doing at the train station?
I was going home. I was coming back from work, and unfortunately, I was only getting like a little bit of service, so I was kind of sifting through some of the tweets I saw and trying to figure out what was real, what wasn't. And that's when I texted you, Paul, actually, and I was like, "Hey, is this real? Is what's happening here?" And I figured it was because we'd heard about the Rubenstein thing before, and it's something that had come out a few months ago that he was looking into buying the team. But I was pretty excited and just trying to sift through and figure out what was happening with like 3 bars of service.
Yeah, it was in an epic moment, just an unbelievable. You missed the story. I'll have to fill that out. Here's Bruce. He's excited too.
Bruce got big.
Bruce is like 110 pounds.
Big guy.
A horse. It's just an amazing week for Orioles baseball. Probably the best week of my life as it pertains to the Orioles. What was your reaction when you realized that this was real, Zach, and that the Orioles were being sold from arguably the worst owner in professional sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think after the playoff losses, I went into this offseason with a bit of negativity, and I'm not like the most positive guy when it comes to sports. I think we all have probably realized that over the 3 years we've done this. But when it comes to the Orioles, John Angelos had put his foot in his mouth about a million times since taking over this team. And I think we all, when Angelos did take it over from his father, we all kind of viewed it as a possible positive thing. Like, I don't think anyone thought this was going to go as badly as it has. And it's just been relentless horrible PR from John Angelos for years and talking about how he wants concerts over wins and God knows what else. Even coming out and saying that we're not going to be able to extend our young stars like Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, Adley Rutschman, whoever else. And all of those things just kind of put me in a bad Orioles mood going into this offseason. And I really, it was the first time I've felt in a very positive way about this team and a very positive way about this organization when the sale happened. I think this is a milestone for this franchise in really not just, kind of the post rebuilding years, but for this team for the next 20-30. It's so important that they have ownership that's going to be willing to sink real funds rather than $5 million, $6 million contracts into this organization. So for me, my reaction is just hope and a bit of optimism, which is not normal for me when it comes to the Baltimore Orioles. And I guess after 15 years of losing, who can really be that optimistic about that team? They went through a bunch of rebuilding years. They won 101 games last year. There's a lot to be optimistic about with an ownership group that's actually going to pay for decent players.
Yeah, and I think that that's an accurate depiction of how I think all of us were feeling after. I'll say a lot of us. I won't say all of us, but a lot of us were feeling after they got swept out of the playoffs. It was they won 101 games. They just lost. They're not going to go spend big money again for the top free agents. So are we going to look at more bargain basement shopping? Or are we looking at trading some of our top prospects, robbing Peter to pay Paul situation? And I think that a lot of us felt the same way that you did, Zach. So then when we see them go and the team gets sold, and then the next day they trade for arguably the best starting pitcher in baseball, it was just like, holy crap, is this what it feels like to root for a team that where ownership's top priority is going and winning a World Series? Is that what this feels like? It's just, it's an incredible feeling that I don't think any of us have ever felt. I remember the mid 90s when the Orioles traded for, when they traded for Rafael Palmeiro, not traded for Palmeiro, but they signed Palmeiro. They traded for Bobby Bonilla. They signed Alomar. They signed Eric Davis, BJ Sorrell. I remember that stuff. Jimmy Key, and they traded for Scott Erickson. I remember all that stuff and being like, knowing that my team was making a run. And I was a little kid, so I expected it to always be like that. And then it just stopped, right? It just absolutely stopped. And now it's like, I feel like a kid again, right? Like
when I am
Orioles
at the yard.
Baseball. Really miss Paul Valley singing on the bat around.
Man. We've got reason to sing in Baltimore, man. We've got absolute reason to sing here in Baltimore. And it's just an amazing feeling right now, which has been even more highlighted by the acquisition of Corbin Burnes. And let's jump right into that, guys. The Orioles, they trade DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, and the competitive balance round A pick, 34th overall, to the Brewers in exchange for Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes, 4 consecutive years finishing top 8 in NL Cy Young voting, including winning the award in 2021. 3 straight years striking out 200-plus batters. You look at Corbin Burnes and you look at his numbers, and 2023 statistically was the worst season of his career.
Right.
The worst season of his career, and he went 10-8 with a 3.39 ERA while throwing 193 and 2/3 innings and striking out 200 batters. And, oh, by the way, led the majors in WHIP at 1.065. And that was the worst year of his career. What are the Orioles getting in Corbin Burnes, and how much better is this team this week than it was last week?
Well, I think it's almost disrespectful to, and I saw this a lot on Twitter, to Kyle Bradish to say the Orioles don't have an ace right now, because I believe they do. I think Kyle Bradish is still the ace. I think Kyle Bradish had a better year slightly than Corbin Burnes did last year. And again, you mentioned that it was the worst year of Corbin Burnes' career. 3 years ago, he was literally unreal. Like the best pitcher in baseball, his ERA was 2.1, something like that. It was exceptionally low. But I think Kyle Bradish is still the ace here. And I agree with your tweet the other day, Paul, about Kyle Bradish still being the opening day starter. I think that's going to be probably what happens. But Corbin Burnes slots in right after him. and really fills the gap, I think, very well between Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish. And then not to mention, you still have Dean Kramer, you still have John Means, you have other guys who can contribute too. Michael Lorenzen's still out there. I know you guys talked about that recently on one of the shows. So there are possibilities of guys that still can come in. But this is huge. Look, this is the first trade they've made in so many years that you look at and you get really excited about. The Cole Irvin trade didn't do that for us last year. The different trades, I mean, how many trades have we saw in the Dan Duquette era that just weren't all that exciting? They got okay players, but they didn't get anyone that's necessarily a superstar ace starting pitcher like Corbin Burnes. This is huge. This brings back like Paul said, many memories of the 90s, and not that I have those memories personally, but from reading about them, when they actually did go out and try to make monumental moves. And I think this is just massive. This is the guy they needed. It fills the hole perfectly. Mike Elias said it in his press conference yesterday. This is the exact guy they needed to take the next step forward.
It absolutely is. And Ryan, we know that the Orioles just traded for your favorite starting pitcher in baseball. But beyond that, this Orioles rotation now is absolutely stacked.
It is.
How does this rotation and Ryan, how does this rotation stack up against some of the best rotations in baseball?
Well, the Orioles rotation was already pretty solid when you have two guys in Bradish and Rodriguez at the top. Now you trade for Corbin Burnes, a second bona fide ace on this roster. I agree with you, Zach. Kyle Bradish is an ace and deserves that respect. This move pushes Tyler Wells out of the rotation. Tyler Wells led Major League Baseball in WHIP in June of last year before he was sent down to, kind of settle down his workload a little bit. Tyler Wells is a really good starting pitcher, and he was probably going to be our 5 before this trade, and now he's likely relegated to the bullpen. This rotation is deep. John Means, who has thrown a no-hitter and was our ace for 2-3 years, is now clearly number 4. And then you've got Dean Kramer, who's been a very, very solid contributor for the few years that he's been up. It's a very, very deep rotation. And I think when you look at not only the depth, but the firepower at the top, at least the top 2, and I would say top 3, throwing Grayson in there, because I do believe that his second half is more indicative of the pitcher he's going to be going forward. I'm not sure there's a better rotation in the league. I think the Dodgers could have a case. I think maybe the Mariners could have a case, but I think when it's all said and done, we're going to be looking at this Orioles rotation.
I look at you mentioned Dean Kramer. He's the Orioles number 5. If Dean Kramer was on this team doing what he's doing now 3 years ago, he would have been the ace.
Yeah,
ace. I can never see my quote fingers in the screen. So the ace. His last 2 seasons, 54 games, 53 starts. The one relief appearance was a game he should have started against the Blue Jays in September of 2022 when Tyler Wells came back from 6 weeks on the IL to make the start in his place. He went an inning and 2/3, and then Dean came in and threw 5 in the 3rd innings of 1-run ball. So it's essentially a start, but he's got a 3.74 ERA and 298 innings in the last 2 years, and he's gone 21-12, and that's the Orioles' number 5 starter. When people talk about John Means, there's some comments here in the chat that I'm going to get to. I'm not ignoring you guys. I do see your chat. Your chats here, and I'm going to get to them here. We're going to get to them here shortly. But people are talking about John Means, maybe not being part of this rotation, maybe moving to the bullpen. Nobody that's like an analyst or a beat writer or anything like that is talking about him going to the bullpen, but it has been mentioned a few times by some fans. John Means came back and made 4 starts at the end of the season last year and pitched to a 2.66 ERA, including taking a no-hitter into the 7th inning against the Cleveland Guardians in his final start. So you look at that the Orioles rotation, top to bottom, it's amongst the best in all of baseball at this point after adding Corbin Burnes. And I think you have 3 guys in Burnes, Bradish, and Rodriguez who are going to finish top 10 in Cy Young voting this year. I think that the top 3 is as good, if not better, than any top 3 in the game today. Now, you talk about what the Orioles gave up to get this. And I told Zach this, when the trade was announced and I saw the return, my heart sunk because it is well documented. I'm as big a DL Hall fan as there is. I am like his number one supporter outside of his family. I think he is absolutely nasty. And if he figures it out from a starting standpoint, I think he is going to be a deadly starter. They get 6 years of control out of DL Hall, John Paul Morosi came out on MLB Network the other day, and he said that the Brewers view DL Hall as a starter, and they think he can be a really good starter. He's going to make their opening day rotation if he's healthy. He's going to get an opportunity to take the ball every fifth day for them, and I think he's going to have a big year for them. Again, if he stays healthy. Zach, you are not a believer. You think that he's at best a back-end reliever. Ryan, I don't really know your feelings too much on DL Hall because we haven't talked about it too much since you've taken over on this show. But to me, that one stung. Joey Ortiz, I understood because he wasn't going to be more than a utility guy here. And then you give up the competitive balance round A pick, 34th overall pick. We have to remember that in 2020, Jordan Westberg was a competitive balance round A pick. So your thoughts on what the Orioles gave up? The baseball world is saying they fleeced the Brewers. They didn't give up much. DL Hall hurts my heart a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I actually felt that the 34th pick was a tough one to give up. You can really find some, and the Orioles did it with Gunnar Henderson, which I think he was picked at 27, maybe a little bit lower than that, or right around that area. You can find some really good players, really good. So that hurt me a little bit. DL Hall, I think he's going to be a really good reliever. I do. I think he's going to be a Josh Hader type of guy. He has that stuff if he can stay healthy and if he can find the zone often enough. Which I think in the playoffs we saw the best of what DL Hall can be. He was excellent, and perhaps he can get better from there. I'm not saying he's not going to. I think as a starter, his workload would be difficult considering he's never really thrown that many innings in the minor leagues. And I think over 100 innings is going to be tough for him to do drastically over 100 innings. He might get to 110, 120, but I don't think throwing 165 innings or anything close to that is really realistic for him. So if he is a starter, I don't know if he's going to go more than like 4 or 5 innings in most outings, and that would be kind of what he's capped at. But I wish him luck. I hope he does well. The Brewers are certainly not a team I hate. I don't really mind them. So I wish DL Hall all the success he can have over there. And as far as Joey Ortiz goes, I always was not really a believer in the top 100 talk. Joey Ortiz, you saw him, I think he came in at 63 on the 2024 pipeline top 100. I think that's a little high. I think he's really up there for the fielding. The hit tool has certainly come along in recent years. You've seen him really turn it on with the bat. But I don't know if he's really going to be any more than just kind of an average starter. I don't think he's going to turn into a star player who hits 320 and jacks 25 home runs a year. I just don't think he's the guy for that. He'll be a great fielder. He was probably the best guy in the organization, even above Gunnar Henderson, even above Jackson Holliday fielding-wise at shortstop. But look, I really don't think they gave up that much for a guy that they probably should extend and probably can extend with this new ownership group when that goes through. And a guy that's going to slot, again, right behind Kyle Bradish as the second best starter at a quite good number 2 starter in your rotation. I don't think they gave up that much for a guy that's as significant as this.
I am inclined to agree with you, Zach. It's a couple guys who I've really kind of fallen in love with as Orioles prospects in DL Hall and Joey Ortiz. I think that whether DL Hall is a starter or a reliever, I think he's going to be good. And I truly hope that he has there would be no hard feelings at all on my part if he goes out and wins a Cy Young, kind of like Jake Arrieta did after we traded him away. Joey Ortiz, I don't think he's going to hit a ton in the majors, but I think he'll hit enough to keep himself in the lineup with his glove. In Milwaukee, he'll get a shot as a third baseman. They have Willy Adames locked in at shortstop for this year at least. And so I do think this is a good opportunity for Ortiz to get some legitimate playing time at the big league level. And I wish those two guys nothing but success. It's weird because I don't consider myself a prospect hugger. I understand that you have to give up talent in order to get it. It's weird, though, that the last 5-6 years have been ones in which we're stockpiling minor league talent and watching these guys come up through the system and be best friends with each other. I think about DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez having to split ways. I think about Joey Ortiz and guys like Kobe Mayo and Connor Norby having to split ways. And it makes me sad in the same way that it made me sad watching Manny Machado and Jonathan Scope get broken up, right? And look, I get it. It's a business. But there's a part of that hurts me a little bit, seeing these guys post on Instagram, pictures of hugging each other after winning championships or hitting walk-off home runs or whatever it may be. It's a crappy part of this game. But when you look at it objectively from the viewpoint of, did we give up too much to get this guy? Absolutely not. I agree with you, Zach, that the 34th pick could be a massive hit for the Brewers. You never know. But it's also important to remember that if the Orioles give Corbin Burnes a qualifying offer at the end of this year and he does end up walking in free agency, they will get a competitive balance round A pick back. So there is a chance that part of the trade ends up being negligible. But this is a trade you make 100 times out of 100.
Oh, I agree with you guys. I agree with you. I'm a firm believer that to get something, you've got to give up something. We see a lot of people who are fans of the Orioles put out their trade proposals. And it's like, why do you think Kyle Stowers, Joey Ortiz, and, Cade Povich are going to get you Dylan Cease? That's just not going to happen. So I firmly believe you have to give up something to get something. There could have been any other prospect not named Jackson Holiday that they could have put in there that I would have been okay with. DL Hall was just a personal favorite of mine, and that's why it hurt. But I understand it. I agree with the trade. I do it 100 times out of 100 because you got a Cy Young winner at the top of your rotation now, and you got another guy at the top of your rotation who finished fourth, who probably should have been a finalist. If you look at the numbers, he should have been a finalist for the award in Kyle Bradish. So
I have two more very tiny points to make if I can real quick. They pulled off this trade without giving up any. Not only did they not have to give up Jackson Holiday, they didn't give up any of their top 5 prospects, which is massive. And Baseball America updated their farm system rankings. The Orioles made this trade. They traded from their surplus of prospects. They are still the number 1 farm system in baseball, according to Baseball America. And so, I mean, look, like we said, it's a deal you absolutely pulled the trigger on. And
I'll add to my comments before from real quick. When the trade broke, I actually figured that someone asked me, one of my friends asked me, hey, what do you think the return's going to be? And I said, I think Colton Cowser will be at the top of this. I'm very happy they held on to Colton Cowser. They got to hold on to, like you said, top 5 prospects. That's a huge thing. Not insignificant. Yeah,
it's a definite amazing job. Michael Elias has been doing this since he got here. Been getting such a huge return. For, in my opinion, good returns. They don't always work out. Kyle Bradish is like Kyle Bradish is the biggest return that he's gotten, the one that's worked out the most in that 4 players trade for Dylan Bundy. But he's gotten players who have gotten major league time at the Orioles that we thought were going to be something. So I think he's done a phenomenal job in the trades that he's made. If you had told me that they were going to get Corbin Burnes for the number 6 and number 7 overall prospect and a competitive balance pick, I would have signed up for that in blood too. So it was definitely an amazing move. And before we let Zach go, because Zach, I know you gotta get going.
I got time. I can stick on for 10 more minutes if you're cool with that. Anything you're good with.
Okay, yeah, man. Whatever you want to do. I know you said 20, 30 minutes, so I wanted to make sure that you were good. Are we looking at the Orioles potentially? Because we Ryan, you mentioned if the Orioles extend the qualifying offer to Corbin Burnes at the end of the season and he walks, they get that competitive balance pick back for the 2025 draft. With this new ownership group, should we stop thinking about the qualifying offer and should we be thinking that they're going to extend a guy like Corbin Burnes?
I don't think they're going to extend him. I think Corbin Burnes, I think they'll try. I will say that. I do think they'll make an effort. I think they'll reach out to Scott Boras and his crew and see what's going on. I don't think they extend him during the season. I do think, however, that there is a realistic possibility that, they let him test the market and he ends up coming back on a massive contract. I do genuinely, he seems very genuine in wanting to test free agency. He's been saying that for a couple of years now, being so close to it. And most guys who say that, especially when they're Boras clients, are going to end up testing free agency. So I don't see an extension happening, but I do see a scenario in which Corbin Burnes wants to come back to Baltimore and re-signs here for, a 5, 6, 7-year deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues here that I was thinking about when I was considering extension is that if you do extend Corbin Burnes, you probably have to sacrifice one of the young Orioles, I would think. Maybe it's Adley Rutschman, maybe it's Gunnar Henderson. If you're paying him $200 million to be here, you're going to have to sacrifice someone else. So, you probably have to weigh the benefits and the possible negative outcomes of this. Obviously, you want to keep all those guys around. Obviously, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to extend Adley Rutschman, Jackson Holiday, and Gunnar Henderson, for most likely. I can't I guess I can't speak on what the new ownership might do. They have a lot of money. Michael Bloomberg is like $100 billion, I should say. I don't know how much money he's going to pour in. And Rubenstein himself certainly isn't poor. But all of these guys, we don't know exactly how this is going to go. So it's hard to speak on it, but I do think you'll have to sacrifice someone else if you are going to extend Corbin Burnes. But hey, Baltimore's had a very, very tough time over the past 10, 15 years and beyond that, getting good starting pitching. So maybe you keep the guy around when you finally get him.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I think that it could be like when you think about the young guys that they have that you would like to see them extend. And you mentioned it, Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson at the top of that list. And you start thinking about Jackson Holliday. And if his career gets off to the start that we think it's going to, those extension talks could come sooner rather than later. And then you look at the rotation, Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez. If you're going to extend a starting pitcher, you might want it to be one of those guys who were just starting their careers or in their early 20s, as opposed to a guy like Corbin Burnes, who he's 29, he's at the peak of his career, but what are you going to get at the back end of that contract? Right. So in that sense, it makes sense. I don't know how much money these guys are willing to spend on people. I also don't think that it's going to cost you. If you want to extend a guy like Jackson Holliday, I don't think it's going to cost you $250 million because you're buying out every year of pre-arbitration and arbitration with a guy like that. You might be looking at 10 years, $150 million for Jackson Holliday that's backloaded, right? I just don't know what that looks like, and I'm not in a front office for good reason. So I shouldn't even talk about it. Do we think? So Mike Elias said that this deal was in the works for months, and that he and John P. Angelos, I have something different in the notes, worked directly together to get it done, and that no ownership has nothing to do with it. And Corbin Burnes was on, I can't remember the podcast is called, the Todd Frazier host. Foul Territory. He was on Foul Territory with Todd Frazier, and he asked him what that call was like, and he said, I got off the phone with the Brewers GM, knew that I had been traded, and then Mike Elias called me, told me that he had been pulling for this deal for months. The timing is ominous, right? The timing of it happening the day after the franchise gets sold. Do we believe that he and John Angelos worked directly together to get this deal done? Or do we think that he's saying that to help John Angelos save face? Because he could have been trying to get this deal to happen for months and then finally got the okay to do it because John's leaving and Rubenstein maybe had something to do with that. Do we believe fully that new ownership had nothing to do with this deal?
No. Yeah.
The timing's too much. The timing's too much.
I would have to think Mike Elias is legally obligated to say that John Angelos did this because technically the sale hasn't gone through yet. So yeah, I don't know what kind of influence that Rubenstein's immediately going to have, but I would think it's going to be mostly how they're operating is the influence he's having. So personally, I think this is a great way for John Angelos to go out. He looks at this and says, okay, my last move really is, as the Orioles majority owner, was getting Corbin Burnes. That's certainly a pretty good way for him to get out. I mean, I'm not conspiratorial about this, but it certainly looks like a great way for him to just kind of end his tenure with the Orioles. And he'll still be back as a senior advisor, as we know. I don't know what kind of capacity that's going to be, but he'll be around, I think. But I don't know.
He'll be around, I believe, until Peter passes and the team gets completely sold.
It sounds like that. Yeah.
Did you guys see the massive shit-eating grin on Elias's face when he was talking about how he was working with John Angelos on this trade? I think that man was lying through his teeth.
I didn't see the press conference. I just heard it.
And I love it. It was just a little Zoom thing, but yeah, he had a smile like I have right now. He was like, I've been working with John Angelos on this since November 1st when the World Series ended, blah, 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 blah. Like, I do think that Angelos was involved in this trade, but the timing is too perfect for it to not have something to do with the change in ownership,
Yeah, I think it's things happen. The timing was too perfect for it to not,
Yeah.
I also don't think this is a trade the Orioles make if they don't think there's a realistic possibility that they can keep him around long term. I think that I know the organization really, really likes Joey Ortiz. I understand he's blocked by a few really good infielders. And I do think that they legitimately believe that DL Hall can be a long-term starting pitcher. So I don't think this is a trade that they make if Elias doesn't have confidence that this new ownership group is going to at least try to shell out the money to keep him around.
It's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out and what the Orioles do moving forward as we approach spring training, just 11 days away. Want to remind you that today's show brought to you by Goose Flights. PressBox urges you to drink a beer or two in honor of Tony Saragusa. We've partnered with Guilford Hall Brewery to release Goose Flights, a delicious lager to honor Tony's legacy and how his family is continuing to celebrate him with the Goose Flights Foundation. The Goose Flight Foundation is now run by Tony's kids and provides non-emergency medical transport to those in need. You can buy 6-packs and single cans of Goose Flights at Guilford Hall Brewery and Costas Inn, which apparently I will never go to. Just kidding. I love the Costas Inn. That's an inside joke. It has nothing to do with the Costas Inn itself. With single cans also available at Alonzo's in Roland Park and the Glory Days Grill locations in Maryland, or purchase 6-packs and cases also available at the Wine Source in Hampton. Raise a glass to Tony and support this great foundation. Go to PressBoxOnline.com/gooseflights to learn all about it. And so, guys, before we get Zach out of here, now people are starting to speculate, just like we are. What's new ownership going to do? What is this Orioles team going to look like moving forward? Do the Orioles have any other moves in the works? And with that, big friend of the show, he tunes in every week. Adip Mahmood, he tweeted out to or commented to us. Did you see Carlos Baerga's IG post about the Orioles potentially being in on Snell and JD Martinez after the Burnes trade? I know he's hit or miss on most things, but the timing is interesting. I'll start off with that. JD Martinez, if with the Orioles loving versatility in their players, he is a DH only guy. Yeah. I do not see that coming. We'll get into trade talk here. I think if the Orioles do add another starting pitcher, I think it's more likely to be as part of a free agent signing. I don't think that they want to trade any more prospects. I think that if they wanted to trade prospects, they would have already done that. So I would anticipate that if they do get another starting pitcher this offseason, it's going to be a signing. Your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, Blake Snell, I don't know. That's another one of the best starting pitchers in baseball, frankly.
2 Cy Youngs.
Right. That guy is incredible, and everyone wants a good lefty. I don't see that happening. That's not. And JD Martinez, look, the bat's great. I'd love to add another good bat to the lineup. That would be fantastic. I think that might come through Jackson Holliday, possibly. We'll see. Maybe Colton Cowser is that guy. But JD Martinez, again, like you said, doesn't add any versatility. He plays one position. Maybe you can throw him at first base and work on that in spring training. Not sure I trust that either. I'm not sure either of those things are going to happen. They might have reached out, but I don't think that means anything's in the works.
Ryan?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too fond of JD Martinez. I mean, we talked about like Justin Turner last week. It's just another one that wouldn't really do it for me. JD Martinez is basically putting another Ryan Mountcastle in your lineup. And I mean, I'm not too keen on that, especially since he won't be playing any defense. Blake Snell, look, I don't see it happening, but I'd be lying if I said I don't think it's possible. What's the first thing you want to do when you make you win the lottery? What's the first thing you do? You want to buy a couple nice cars or something, right? This ownership transition could go through as soon as this week with the ownership meetings taking place. I really think they're going to push this deal along. And I think that by the end of this week, there's a realistic shot that the transition has been made. And when that happens, if Blake Snell is still out on the market, it would not surprise me in the slightest if they say, "Hey, Mike, go give his agent a call and see what they're asking for right now." It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Now, do I think look, adding Blake Snell to a rotation that already includes 2, maybe 3 aces and John Means, who formerly threw a no-hitter, get out of here. That would be an historically good starting rotation. I don't see it, but like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if they at least explore.
Yeah, and you talk about throwing a no-hitter. You have 2 guys in your rotation who have thrown no-hitters and another 2 guys who have no-hitter stuff. It's a great day to be an Orioles fan.
Maybe Domingo Germán needs to be the ads, then get a guy with a perfect game in there.
Nope.
All right.
I'm totally
take Zach off the feed.
What a final statement. No, a little bit more rapid fire with these because we're coming up towards the end of the show here. Randall, Randall Francase, is that if I butchered your name, I apologize. Ocean now trade with Seattle for Gilbert. Seattle needs bats and those have a few. Adds more strength to current rotation for next 3 years. Allows means to go to the bullpen, build arm strength, strengthen the bullpen. I don't want to trade for another starting pitcher. I don't want to trade any more prospects because now you're getting into guys who I think are going to be here as early as this year, who are actually going to help this club.
I will mention though, if you're a prospect hugger, you might want to look at a different team because I think in the next probably 5 years they're going to make some significant trades. This is already again, we think this is the new ownership group probably going through with this and making this trade and making this deal. They're going to make more deals like this. I mean, they just are. They have to supplement the young talent they have. I'm pretty confident in that. So, but Gilbert right now, probably not a great idea.
Ryan?
I would love to go out and get Gilbert depending on the asking price. But I think it would be too much. If my memory serves me right, Randall, I think, is the same commenter who a couple months ago said that we should trade for either Gilbert from Seattle, Yuri Perez from the Marlins, or Gavin Williams from the Guardians. Look, and as we said last time, those are three guys who, yeah, they'd be great to have on the team, but you're giving up a lot of talent to get young, controllable starting pitching. I don't see it happening. I do agree, though. I think it might not be the worst thing if John Means ended up pushed to the bullpen, at least to start off the year, stretch him out a little bit, make sure he stays healthy. So I don't hate that.
I don't know. I think John Means, and look, I know that they weren't expecting a lot of starts out of John Means at the end of the year, so they could get good innings out of him. I know they had to be more careful with him this year, but I also believe I remember Michael Lassen, I could be wrong here, saying that John Means is a full go with no restrictions in spring training. This is a guy who's thrown a lot of big league innings. He's had a lot of time to come back from Tommy John surgery. If he's a full go, I don't think he needs to go to the bullpen. Randall went on to say, adding Gilbert or Luzardo would hedge against Burnes not re-signing. And that is true because you have team control with those guys for another 3 seasons. And look, you maybe you don't have to give up prospects. Maybe you trade for one of these guys and you give up Dean Kramer and Anthony Santander to pave the way for Colton Cowser and Heston Kjerstad. Maybe that's a trade that you're able to make to get somebody like this, especially for some of these teams that are looking for outfield help. And I'm not one who's going to sit here and say that I'm a prospect hugger, but you look at their top 5, Jackson Holliday, Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, Kobe Mayo. These are guys who I think are going to help the ball club pretty soon in 2024, who are going to be everyday players for the team, and I don't want to get rid of them.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's fair.
I mean, especially on the Jackson Holliday front. I assume he's untouchable. There is no deal that they could be offered that he would be traded in.
Absolutely not. Not at this point.
I will say Luzardo is probably my second favorite pitcher behind Corbin Burnes outside of the Orioles. So, hey, look, from a personal standpoint,
bring him on. Bring him on.
In other words, you like the guys who throw 100 with nasty sliders. More.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
RL Topper, he says, are they done or will there be any bullpen moves made to sort of slot in where Hall was? Please, no Baker or Aiken. No Baker or Aiken. I want to scream that from no Bacon. I want to scream that from the top of a mountain. Neither one of those guys has any business on a team that's making a serious case to make a run of the World Series. There's Phil Matone and there's Ryan Brazier that are out there. Is it Matone or Maton or I don't know.
Maton. And he just signed this morning. So
he did sign this morning
with the Rays.
Okay, so he's not out there. So you're really looking at Ryan Brazier at this point, unless you're trading for somebody. I don't think they're done. I just don't know how significant a move it's going to be. Ryan, go ahead.
There have already been reports that the Orioles have been connected to Brazier. I think it was a Heyman tweet from a few weeks ago. There are like 6 teams involved in his market. So maybe they bring on someone like him. One of my first thoughts when I really was able to think about the ripple effect of the Corbin Burnes trade is, all right, they're going to need another bullpen guy to replace Steele Hall. And honestly, I wanted Fuji back. He just signed with the Mets yesterday. I wanted Shintaro Fujinami back in the bullpen. I think his stuff is too good for him to not figure it out. The Orioles have been really good with taking pitchers who struggle with command and helping them find their way. I thought Fuji was a perfect project for this team. But, hey, I wish him success. I hope they do fill the void, though, because DL Hall, I do think, is a pretty significant loss.
I do, too. But I am glad to see that he's going to get an opportunity to start for the Brewers. I can't wait to see that happen. I told Zach, if he becomes like a legitimate ace starting pitcher for the Brewers, I will go buy a DL Hall Brewers jersey. I promise you that I will. Today's show brought to you by Project Game Day, which continues tomorrow. Oh, that's not the right read. Sorry. Today's show brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. It was a big week on Glenn Clark Radio, covering the dizzying amount of Baltimore sports news this week. If you missed any of the conversations, including Buster Olney, Dan Duquette, Ben McDonald, and Xavier Scruggs on the Orioles sale and acquisition of Corbin Burnes, plus Charles Davis, Michael Lombardi, Trey Wingo, and more at the end of the Ravens season and coaching changes, plus all the area's college lacrosse coaches before the season starts this weekend. Jesus, this weekend. And Maryland basketball star Jameer Young. You can find that all right now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. Zach, thank you so much for joining the show. Oh, no, we ran out of time and we can't talk about the Ravens. Oh, no. Yeah.
Damn it.
Thank you to everybody for tuning in. One last thing I will say, go get Cody Bellinger. He fits this team like a glove. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our listeners and our viewers. Without any of you, we do not have a show until next week. Zach, this one's especially for you. See ya.